You're listening to Pole Parlour, a fun, inspiring podcast for all those bewitched by pole dance. Each week, your Madam Crimson Minxxx has candid conversation with unique, engaging individuals from within and around the pole dance community. Pole Parlour is passionate about preaching creativity, soulful sensuality, and empowerment through pole dance.
You know how we do.
Welcome everyone to Pole Parlour. This is episode 55, Shane Godliman. I'm your host, Crimson Minxxx. This week on the podcast, we have pole athlete and coach Shane Godliman. On this episode, we talk about Shane's history in athletic and how he found pole as a physical trainer, his experience as a male poler in a female-dominated industry, his methods on addressing fear and reaching optimal performance with his clients, and his new podcast, aptly titled The Shane Godliman Show. It's my first podcast interview with a fellow podcaster. And don't forget to check out Shane's post-podcast interview on the blog at poleparlour.com, where he shares his favorite photos, music, video, and more. And while you're there, find links to all the Pole Parlour social media, including the private Facebook group, so let's connect and hang after the show. And now, here's Shane. Welcome, Shane Godliman, to the Pole Parlour podcast. How are you today?
Great. Thank you for having me on. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic. Thank you for asking.
Awesome.
Yeah, let's jump on in. For how long have you been pole dancing, and how did you first discover pole?
So I think I've been getting this wrong for a little while. I thought I'd been poling for a little longer than I actually had. It's about 3.5 years since I first kind of discovered pole. My discovering pole story is a little bit cliche, I think, in some ways.
You were a stripper?
No, I guess from the guy perspective, I kept coming in. I wanted to learn to do a human flag. In short, I was doing personal training, and I was working with a girl we were working on some handstands and things, and she had just sort of said, "Oh, you should come down to pole. You should come down to this place and try it. You'll love it. This, that, and the other." And at the time, I was trying to work towards doing like something to the effect of an INX. I couldn't do it, but that was basically what I was trying to do.
Of course, that was your beginner move.
Well, I mean, I was already, doing a lot of bodyweight training. I was teaching like gymnastic strength and stuff. So, I had a decent amount of strength, but I couldn't do an INX yet. But yeah, so I said, well, could she help me out with this? And she showed me the video of the teacher at that place, and she could like walk down into the human flag. And I was like, okay, that's pretty insane. So I was sold. So I went down to like an open session, and this was at Tricksters in Bradford, and Bex, the instructor, she kind of knew that I had a bit of strength and I could do different things and this and that. So she gave me a couple of little things to play with, a little handstand, and she showed me a reverse grab spin. And that was the thing that kind of did it for me. It was that moment, that spin,
Really?
The power and the kind of flick back, and I came back down, and I was like, okay, yeah, this is something entirely different I could probably sink my teeth into. So yeah, and then I think I didn't really jump like straight into it, like super intense. I went sort of every couple of weeks or whatever, starting out initially, and then the further I got into it, I got a bit more involved, I guess. And I did a workshop with Lizette Kroll, and she was talking to me about, she just sort of was saying like, oh, well, when you compete, this, that, and the other. And I'm thinking, oh, well, okay, well,
you got thrown into it.
Right. Yeah. So, a lot of people were kind of excited, like, because they said like there weren't a lot of guys around the area at the time and stuff. So, I got pretty good reception. So I got brought in pretty quickly.
So you're in Britain. What's the city you're in?
I'm currently in Huddersfield, which is Yorkshire, north, next to Manchester, for ease of reference. But I'm going to be moving to Bristol soon, which is a bit more southwest, next to Wales. Nice. So I'm a little bit in between. I'm in Huddersfield at the moment, but there's not a lot else in my house because I've just kind of cleaned it out and getting it all shifted and done. So yeah.
Oh, that's fun. At the moment. So you have a new pole family to meet when you head over there.
Yeah, I mean, I've spent a fair bit of time in Bristol, so I know a lot of the people down there, and so it's going to be good to jump in and get involved with that.
Nice.
So cool. So let's go back. What is so before pole you were training? What's your history in all of this movement, physical training stuff?
I guess to do it properly, the story would start in college for me, which was like 16. I know it's kind of different ages, different places. And it started like with basketball. Basketball was the first thing that I really sort of fell in love with in terms of sport and movement and stuff. Like growing up in the UK as a guy, you play football.
Yeah.
That's just what happens. There just isn't other stuff. Like even in sports in school, like when we're doing other activities outside of football, it's like, oh, it's such a drag. Like that's just what everyone kind of wants to do.
You guys don't even have football. You just have football.
We have the version of football where you kick the ball with your feet rather than holding it with your hands. Yeah. So, but I just never really gravitated towards it. I didn't really. I liked it enough. I was kind of quick, so, I could do little bits and bobs. But, basketball at like sort of 16 was where I really fell in love with sport and training. And that's when I kind of got really into, doing training all day and, getting up early, training for college and waiting after college and stuff. I worked much harder at basketball than I did on my actual study at college. And I got fairly good at basketball, and I got an opportunity to go out and play in this like little academy in France, in the south of France. And I did that, but I didn't do it for very long. I was going to stay out there for like a year, and I didn't end up staying for the full year. I think it occurred to me that I was, as much as I loved the game, I was trying to push myself further down that road for the wrong kind of reasons, right? It was more about, I don't know, trying to prove something to, I don't know, myself, other people, whatever. Not failing to acknowledge the fact that I wasn't good enough to play at the level that I would have liked to play at. So that, just to make it, not to make it sound like I could have been a professional basketball player and walked away from it all. And then, so basically I came back from France and I was a bit like, oh, I've probably got to think of something to do now. Which took a while, but eventually I kind of ended up started doing personal training. And, I just kind of felt like that was something that I was going to enjoy more than anything. I know I can't stick to stuff if I don't enjoy it. I just the worst for that kind of stuff. So I had to find a job, something to do. No, it's, yeah. So, but yeah, so I started doing the personal training, and I kind of got bored of that a bit quickly because I was doing, I was in a commercial gym doing, I don't know, normal, a bit more of the kind of boring stuff.
Training non-athletes and non-maybe.
I mean, the non-athlete thing was quite fun, and I think that will probably come up again later with some of the other questions. But I think it was just kind of the mundaneness of the routine, the style of training. I just really felt like there was more. I could give more, and I could get more out of people, and just that whole experience could just be a bit richer, I guess. Which is where the whole body weight stuff started. Started trying to mess around with doing some handstands and different things like that. Kind of got into the calisthenics scene and street workout type stuff, and so that's where some of the body weight strength and everything came in. And then like I say, I was, as I got a bit further down the line, I was teaching more of that stuff. I was teaching workshops, traveling around a little bit, and then we fast forward to the session with that girl, and she said, hey, come and try pole. And yeah, it all kind of went from there. I mean, I live up north now. I'm not from up north. When I first moved up here, I met a lot of different people from a lot of different kind of disciplines. I met a lot of break dancers. I met a lot of parkour athletes and dancers of all different styles and lots of different people, and people that did kind of like fire breathing and all that kind of different entertainment type stuff. And they would do stilt walking, like the bouncy stilts, and do flips and stuff and all. So I'd the whole time, I guess the last sort of 5 years of my life, I've been really, really lucky to just be around some incredible people, and it's all kind of filtered into, I guess, the person I am now, or what I'm trying to do.
Multiple influences are always good to make you well-rounded and interesting, for sure. What was your perception of pole before, like when she suggested you go give it a try? Were you like, that's for chicks, or were you really open to it, or did you not really know anything about the community and just giving it a try?
Yeah, I think as you say that, actually, I'm not sure that I even thought about it. I guess mostly it was that I just didn't have any idea what it was about. I don't know. I can't remember if she maybe showed me a video or something, but yeah, I don't remember actively thinking, oh, they can't go do this because girls do that. I mean, I feel like that's a pretty good reason to do stuff anyway, but
Yeah.
so I don't think I had any kind of specific preconceptions. I know when I got there, everything was pretty sparkly, pretty pink. I did definitely notice that I wasn't maybe the average clientele that was, at that studio, but I was having fun. So
Yeah. Have you since then kind of found a studios and tribe of people who are more along your lines of the more acrobatic, athletic side, the body resistant side, or how did that work?
It didn't really work geographically like that. I don't have like one kind of space that I've been at or that I've kind of based myself out on. Everyone's called me a pole whore for as long as I can remember. I've always loved kind of traveling around and going to different people's studios and training with different people and meeting different people. And, especially being in the UK, it's quite easy to get around, I can cover the whole country in not a lot of time considering, or compared to other people like yourself.
It's we met in Texas, and it was like, the only way you get from place to place is a car here. So it is even difficult if I want to go to cities a few hours away to just go train. So that's pretty cool in Europe that you guys have that ability.
Yeah. So I've kind of traveled around, and I guess I developed my community kind of all over. It's a bit different people, different places. Lots of people have different kind of schedules and stuff, and so with me being happy to travel around, I get invited to go to a lot of places because people know that I'll come because I'm not really bothered about driving a few hours to go for a pole jam or whatever, and so I didn't necessarily have like one specific place where I kind of like, oh, these are all my people, and I've spent a lot of time in a lot of different places, and have a lot of people to thank for helping me out along the way. But it's been a bit of everyone, a bit of everywhere. So
that's cool. And when did you start? Did you start as a coach and trainer right away? Because let's talk about what your role is at this point, and then how soon you started doing that and getting there.
I wasn't coaching as soon as I got into pole. I can't remember exactly like how long it was. It was maybe, I guess, less than a year, between 6 months and a year, I'd say. I had worked with some of the local polers teaching kind of strength workshops and stuff. So a few of them knew who I was. And so once I started doing pole, and started getting a bit better and doing different stuff that other people wanted to do, a few of them would sort of message me and say, hey, well, could you come and teach me, help me out with some of this stuff? And that's how I guess the coaching with the flips and everything kind of started, because not only was I kind of doing that stuff and showing that I could do it, it helps massively that I'm a guy in a industry that's mostly female, and I'm a bit taller, a bit bigger than most of the people that I work with. So even just from a safety aspect, a lot of people feel just a lot safer just because with me spotting them, just because I'm a little bit bigger. So that definitely helped as well. And then there was a couple of people, I guess, with the kind of stuff that I'm teaching, it is quite attractive visually with the videos on Facebook and stuff. It looks exciting. And so, I got to work with a lot of exciting and, high level athletes and things quite quickly, because it was more of those kind of guys that wanted, I've got no business grabbing a beginner and telling them this is how you do a backflip. So, it's closer. It's more of the advanced and elite end, generally speaking, that I work with anyway. So I guess because I started working with some bigger names and things, it all spread quite quickly. I guess that's sort of authority by association, if you will.
Yeah, you came in at a different entry point, and you probably have a smaller pool of potential clients just because people have to be at a certain level to have access to what you're teaching, but you probably have like a very dedicated group of clients.
Yeah, I think it's easier for me in that you either want to work with me or you don't. right? Like you want to do the flips or you don't. Like if you want to do flips, you can come see me. We can do that. If you're not interested, you don't. So I guess it's an easier. I don't have to fight for the gray area quite as much. You know, there's middle ground. You know, am I in or am I out? So, yeah. So I guess it is a bit harder in some respects, but I think mostly having a specific USP has helped me, has benefited me a lot. I talk to people about that a lot in terms of when people ask me about, you know, progressing through the industry and stuff. Is, you know, I think that's a big thing, especially now with a lot of different people and everyone's awesome. So
having a specific focus on a certain niche, is that what you mean?
Yeah, I mean, not necessarily not just by sort of types of movement, right? You don't have to bottle yourself into only teaching one type of thing, you know, but it does help to be able to have something a little bit more specific that, you know, that kind of describes the value that you bring to the table.
Yeah. So what do people come to you for? Do they come for you just for training? Do you help people with competitions and showcases and things like that?
Yes and no. I wouldn't say I help people for competitions. I've had people come to me that want to learn moves for competitions, but I'm not your competition coach, right? So I'm not doing the choreo. I'm not, you know, I can give you your opinion if you want it, I guess, but yeah, people come to me mostly for the moves, for the tricks or the combos, or, you know, to kind of, I mean, people will come to me and say, hey, I want to do something along these lines. Can you think of something that would add to it or whatever like that? But, you know, I can't take you from no competition routine to having a competition routine. That's not,
you're a
not
consultant, a competition consultant for
yeah, I like that. Let's use that.
Yeah, makes you sound executive too.
Yeah.
Have you ever competed or performed or?
I have competed, yeah. I
know that because I've seen the videos, but just for people listening.
Yeah, feel free to not look at the videos if you want.
They're super fun. They're super different.
Yeah, they're just me doing my thing. So I have competed. I competed at Mr. Pole Fitness Semi-Pro and then the professional as well in the UK, or the male category of Miss Pole Dance. Yeah, I mean, I like you say, I tried to do something. I guess I didn't really try to do something different per se. I just did what I do, which is just kind of pick a song that I like and go and mess about and be mostly unprepared and see what happens.
It felt very, from what the ones I've seen, it felt very like street dance, freestyle, flippy, cool tricks. Like, I don't know, not to stereotype, but it felt really dude, you know? But I think that stuff's cool, and I almost see how it could influence like female pole dancers or male pole dancers. Like there was a lot of like Nadia Sharif feeling to that as well. And so, you know what I mean? Like in just like a different style of dance. So
yeah. No, I don't think it's sort of stereotyping to call it dude-ish. I think that, you know, that it's fairly representative of the kind of style. And you know, a lot of people did sort of say that to me. It's interesting, actually. Quite a few people kind of went out of their way to say, oh, it was quite nice to see something a little bit more manly at the competition. And I thought, I don't know if you're supposed to say that, actually. Is that right? Should we feel like that? It was an interesting thing to traverse. But yeah, no.
Like we've had Alexander Shukin on, and he is very masculine in his pole dance, but I would call him very artistic.
I can see that.
And refined and dancerly. Where yours is a bit more raw. I mean, we always talk.
You can call it rough. It's okay.
Yeah, I said raw, Shane. I said raw, but it's you know, we always talk in this podcast about how important it is to have all different styles represented. It's just a pole, so you know, bringing your raw dudish style is just as important to this industry as any other.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I came at it like sort of from that angle. I wasn't really trying to bring something that I felt was missing. I guess really that was all I had. You know, I'm not, I don't, you know, I'm not a choreographer in that sense, and I didn't really feel comfortable trying to, you know, create something that I felt was, you know, like create something in a way that I felt like it was supposed to be, like, you know, make it for other people, for the judges, or for the you know, I couldn't. wasn't really comfortable with that. And again, it's not really what I do. So I mostly just defaulted back to, just doing my thing because that's what I have.
Yeah, sounds like
just
you're not. Oh, sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, that's it gives you an opportunity to stand out a little bit more. When you're just doing what you do, because no one else can do that, obviously.
Totally, and it sounds like you're not really striving for the stage. It's not really your passion. It does seem like you really enjoy the coaching a bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I don't really enjoy performing and competing in pole in the classic sense, but I'm not necessarily against performing as a whole. I'm not against the stage. I think, in short, I feel like it's just not how I want to say what I'm trying to say. When people go up on stage, they create a theme, they create this routine, this character, and they have that kind of message, that something kind of deeper behind it. And I just don't really feel like that's the way for me to communicate, who I am or what I'm about. I'd happily go on stage with a microphone and talk, or I'd maybe do something that was a little bit more interactive. I've done battles before and stuff like that. Like I like it when I guess there's someone else or something else to kind of communicate with or move with, or feed off of maybe. But I feel uncomfortable with the pole performance stuff I do it a little bit, but it doesn't really feel like, I don't enjoy it in the moment, right? Like, it's not like I'm worried about it before and then I go and do it and I'm like, oh, what was I worried about? It's kind of like, I'm not really worried about it. I just know that I'm really, it's not really kind of what I do type of thing. Yeah. And then I kind of go on, I'm a little bit hesitant or whatever, because, I'm not in line with my self, if you will.
That makes sense. At least you realized that and weren't trying to force something that wasn't making you happy. But that's cool that you still do like putting yourself out there. Are there pole battles?
I think there have been a few. I think there's a few people have tried to put on some little events. I don't see much of it.
That could be a thing. I'm picturing like 8 Mile, with Eminem.
Right.
Like you're coming out in your hoodie, and I don't know.
I know that
sounds really interesting, actually.
Yeah, I know, like the ISPF, or whichever acronym it is that does all that.
Any of them. Yeah,
right.
That's fine.
Yeah, whichever acronym it is. They put on something called Ultra Pole, which is like pole battles, and it's kind of like you say, it's that timed, 30 seconds, or trick for trick, or however they do it. I don't know how well it's been kind of received or whatever. It's got to be the right
people, the right audience, the right situation for sure. Maybe like a fitness competition or something that would be good at.
I guess it's harder to know how far to kind of go. When the battles and stuff that I've been to, the events that I've been to, it's competitive and it's quite aggressive, not in a personal way, but people are going at it. I want to win, which means I want you to lose type, and we don't really have that same kind of dynamic. Yeah, so I feel like, some people are going to go at it a little bit harder, and then other people are going to be a bit like, you don't need to take it this seriously. And I don't reckon it flows as well within the pole. I know some people have battled. It's been, there's been some cool, like Bendy and Ona did that battle. They had the video on YouTube, and, so...
maybe it's in a different style or in a different energy of some sort, but...
Possibly, yeah.
Could be cool. But yeah, I like that you think that the pole community wouldn't be receptive to like being competitive in the sense of like hoping for someone else to lose type of way. I feel like that speaks volumes, right?
Yeah. There is that obviously in the pole world. I find it funny to kind of observe people talking about the competitions and stuff, because people are competitive, and
yes, of course.
People want to win, and by default that involves other people losing and stuff. People get into it, but we don't really talk about it very much. I feel like it's not nice to be competitive, really. It's a bit of a negative thing sometimes. So I think more people than we realize are competitive, but not everyone kind of voices it in the same kind of way as they might in another discipline or whatever.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because we talk about just being competitive with yourself. And I see a lot of people being pissed at themselves after competitions, but not at other people per se. I mean, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. Of course it happens. But I guess because there is that personal element to it, where if you are in more of like, say, a fitness competition, you're mad at the other person because they could lift more than you or something, then you can, I don't know, something more direct to be mad at, I guess. I don't know.
That's exactly it. It's all a bit broad, right? Like when we start to judge art, like we can't even define it. So, suddenly it's all this, it's hard. So yeah, I think you're right. It's maybe just a bit too broad and a bit too diverse.
Yeah. Have you ever, like, being a male in the pole industry that is very vocal about keeping the sexy side in some instances, have you ever, like, gotten any shade or felt any pushback for what you do, or not really?
Not really. I mean, I listen to stuff that's said, and sometimes I think about it, and it is kind of interesting. When I started, a lot of people were kind of, like I said, a lot of people were excited, but a lot of people were excited specifically because they were saying, it would be nice to have some more straight men in pole, right? And so it's kind of like, okay, that that's quite nice and that sounds cool, and I totally get it. I don't think any of those people were saying anything kind of wrong. But at the same time, I was also thinking, does it matter? Does it, what changes if the numbers, shift? And I'm not making a judgment on either side. I just found it kind of interesting that, people from this community were, commenting on specific traits that aren't necessarily actually that important, that really mean that much. But in terms of like pushback, not really. I know other people have unfortunately had to experience negativity and stuff, but that hasn't really been my experience. I think with there being less guys, with the UK being a bit smaller, there's, sometimes, now that I'm a bit more recognized or whatever, I get booked for some things that, people would like to get booked for. Not everyone's happy with stuff like that sometimes, because I'm not the first person to be teaching flips. I'm not the first person to be doing flips and things and so some people say some stuff, but it starts to become less about me being a guy, more about just general kind of politics and stuff. I don't feel like I've had any shade for being a man.
That's good.
Yeah, like I say, people have been pretty accepting of it, and if anything, it's more promoted. Like you say, it's a lot of people have kind of reached out to me and. Not sort of saying like, oh, you inspired me to kind of do, but it's more of that, when someone else kind of does something and you didn't really know if other people did it and you didn't know if it was normal, and then you realize and you kind of, it's kind of freeing, right? So I think it's more of that. My journey has been, a few more people have kind of been like, oh, I'll just keep my tracksuit bottoms on and do it pole in shoes, like, because, I don't know.
Are you friends with like a lot of male pole dancers that are like your style of dance? Have you connected with people kind of around the globe in that sense, or?
Yeah, I've connected with a lot of.
You guys have a private Facebook group or something, or?
I don't have a private Facebook group or a group chat or anything. I mean, what Instagram's like. It's easy to meet people and connect and everything. So yeah, I've talked to a lot of different people that kind of do my style and stuff. But I mean, there's a lot of other people that I haven't connected with, that I'd like to meet and stuff. And I mean, it depends how it comes around, right? Like, I don't just want to just throw out loads of messages to loads of people and be like, hey, we do stuff that's similar. Have conversations with me. So it's kind of situational, and sometimes it's
you have to be subtle. You just have to start giving them hearts and likes. I don't know how this works.
Right, sometimes you do someone's move and tag them, and oh look, they commented on my video. Look how we're connecting. But yeah, no, I guess again, the male community is a bit smaller, so you get noticed a bit quicker than you would if I was a female doing the exact same thing. Maybe I don't get noticed quite as much. I'm
glad you said that, which is just the reality of it. But you work with mostly females. Just because
almost entirely, yeah.
That's who mostly the majority of the industry is. Let's keep it real.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it took a while for any guys to come to me to do one-to-ones and workshops and stuff. It was quite a while. I don't say that to mean that people were actively avoiding me. I've there's no evidence to behind that. It was just interesting to me that I spoke to this with Dan Rosen as well. It's kind of interesting. You'd think that when a guy comes along that's doing, like you said, sort of what's associated with more manly type stuff, that more guys would want to kind of reach out or whatever and do some of it. But it was quite a while before I'd worked with any guys. But yeah, just like you say, there's pretty much everyone in pole is a female. So, that's just the numbers. Yeah.
Yeah. And you connect with the right people. Like, I know you were touring with Lindsay Life, who has that passion for really pushing things physically on the pole. So you meet the right people to tour with or to hook up with, to coach and stuff. So
I've been infinitely fortunate with the amount of people that I've met, the kinds of people that I've met. Yeah, it's really amazing.
And you also, because you said you just spoke with Dan Rosen, so
yeah,
you also have a podcast.
I do have a podcast.
You're a person with the podcast on a podcast. You're my first person I've interviewed that has a podcast. So tell us about it.
Okay, yeah. So the podcast is something that I wanted to do for a while. So I started it. When did I start it? Maybe a month ago ish. 3 weeks ago, something like that. Yeah, about a month ago. I'd asked Sarah Scott to do an episode, maybe about 2.5 years ago at this point. It was something in my it was something in my head that I wanted to do for a while, and I just kind of I put it off, or didn't get around to it, forgot about it or whatever. And but it's my podcast is hard to describe in that I don't have like an elevator pitch type thing, but it's in short, it's I'm sitting down and having conversations with people I find interesting about the work that they do, about their kind of their mindset, their philosophies and different things. And I think my struggling to explain it is kind of part of what kind of took me so long, because I didn't want to feel like I was going to be completely kind of bottled in to do like one thing, even so it took me a while to think of like a name and like a theme or whatever, and that's how I ended up. It's just called the Shane Godliman Show.
I was gonna say, did you just give up on that?
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly it is kind of weird to kind of say, hey, people say, what's your podcast called? I'm like, it's the Shane Godliman Show. Like, it sounds a bit pretentious and a bit, but at the end of the day, it was just like, that's all it is, really. It's just kind of me talking to people, and I'd share it with other people. And I think,
you have a lot of pole dancers on, but you're not just pole.
Well, I'm around a lot of pole dancers, right? So I'm talking to the people that are around me. So most of them are pole dancers. Most of them probably will be pole dancers for quite a long time. But it's not something that's specifically just for pole or just for fitness or anything like that. I think, but it's as much as it's really cool to have, in terms of it's really cool to like share it and have the feedback come back and have people kind of engaging with it. And it's it's obviously a good like marketing and network tool in terms of it. It boosts my the awareness of what I'm doing or whatever. But more like at the core of all of that is that it's something that I really want to do. Like, so it's really fun and really kind of easy for me, I guess, because I just want to do it. This is the kind of stuff I want to do anyway. I want to sit and have these kind of conversations and, dig a little deeper into some of these different things. And, I don't know what it is, but I seem to look at stuff in a certain way that, I can kind of dig a little bit deeper into some of these kind of issues or ideas or whatever, and get people talking about it in a little bit more of a richer way, I guess, than you would normally discuss some of these things. So, like what you have here, taking lots of people have spoken to lots of different pole dancers and stuff, but, when do you have the chance to kind of sit down and really be like, right, like, who are you and how did you get here? Like, what's all this about? Like, it's, it's fun to have that kind of, that freedom to go a bit more long form with it. And, so I have a podcast. Don't really know what it's about. I couldn't think of a good name, so it's called The Me Show. But it's fun. You might like it if you go check it out.
Well, I've listened to a bunch of episodes, and it's great. You had Jason Lamb on recently. I listened to Peach Lee Ray. Hers was really good. Sarah Scott was really good. So, and it's not the other ones weren't really good. Those are just the 3 that I've listened to so far. But I'm going to put a link to it in the show notes, obviously. But I like that we're like kind of interviewing the same people in the same industry, but I can tell you right now, your interviews are so different from mine. Like you come from it. I come from everything from like very feely, girly, feminine energy, and you definitely have like you have a completely different perspective because of who you are. So, I think it's cool we could interview the same two people and have two completely different stories from them, I think.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I really enjoy that. Like I say, it's just me asking people stuff, and so yeah, it's like I say, it's easy to kind of keep your own lane and not really be crossing over with the other stuff. So we, like I say, we can both have the space and enjoy the same cake, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and one thing you say, that you are interested in the psychology of fear and optimal performance. And you said that I don't know if you remember saying that, but you did say that in your intro episode. So like, I thought that would be, because that seems like something that you apply to your coaching, the fear and the optimal performance. So like, how do you see that manifest in pullers, and like, how do you, what's your expertise dealing with that and coaching people through that?
I mean, my expertise, I don't know. I mean, like I said, I've had an opportunity to work with a lot of different people from a lot of different situations, a lot of different backgrounds. I mean, you asked me about my role before in terms of the coaching and stuff, and we talked a bit more about the origin. I think my role in terms of coaching for me is I assist with problem solving. My coaching philosophy, I try and be in motion with the people that I'm working with, right? I don't want to just kind of bark steps 1 through 5 and then stand there and you achieve it or you don't. Like, I feel like my role as a coach is to be in motion with that person, be communicating and try and kind of embody skills in that person rather than just kind of instruct in a verbal sense. So I think my expertise in terms of dealing with some of these stuff, I wouldn't call myself an expert, but I just take everything from what I've learned from all the different types of people that I've worked with, my own experiences, trying and failing at lots of different stuff, and I read a lot. So I've done a lot of different research in terms of the fear stuff, coming at it from the neuroscience, from the psychology, from the philosophy, and different things, kind of piecing all of that together. So yeah, I don't know if I'm an expert, but I just kind of I use
maybe
a bit of it.
Expert was the wrong word. Like, what's your style? How about that?
Yeah, it's.
You deal
I think
with
it's
the
similar
psychology too, right?
Yeah, so I think it's kind of conversational. So I think in terms of what I deal with, the issues that people have with fear, with this stuff, and obviously fear is it's a big word. There's a lot that can fall under that, but you can you understand what we mean in terms of fear with like the pole and everything and the flips and different stuff like that. I think that one of the biggest problems is that it's seen as an inherently negative thing, right? Like fear is bad. So it has this kind of inherent negativity to it, and kind of I don't know if it's with that because of that, but it tends to be something that we see as like external. So fear like happens to us, right? Like my most commonly heard phrase is "I've got the fear." I'm always like, okay, like where did you find that? I don't know what that is. Like where did you, right? So because like, if you use the example of say like a backflip or something simple like that, like maybe I understand the steps, I go to do it, and what happens? Well, I get this massive surge of like physiological sensation, right? I get all these kind of feelings, air quotes as it were, like, and something about that is associated as kind of being negative, even though realistically it's the fact that those feelings influence my behavior or lack of behavior, and that's kind of what I'm frustrated at. I feel like the fear kind of stops me, but I don't think that that's true in the way that we're kind of packaging up fear. Like all of those sensations that you feel in those situations can be used for good, right? They can be helpful for your kind of situation. Like the reason that we have fear, obviously it keeps us alive. Like it's a useful tool. Like it goes all the way back to like single cell organisms. It's not archaic, it's efficient, right? So, and people we talk about, the idea that we kind of we have these kind of ancient brains, right, that are used to like reacting to saber-toothed tigers and these big threats, and you react in that same kind of way to, you know, nominal existential threats, and, you know, in today's life or whatever. And there's kind of some truth to that, but again, like the problem is it paints it in a way where it's like it's negative, like we've got too much of this fear. But what is it? Well, it's attention, really. Like our emotions, for me, are like the way that we engage with the world. Like when I'm scared, like, you know, say I stayed at my mum's house a couple of days ago, and I was down south. They got a big house. I've lived on my own for a few years, so I'm used to it. But that house is a bit bigger, you know, it's a bit older, a bit creaky or whatever. And it was late at night, and I started hearing a few different things. And I remember feeling a bit like, oh, I'm kind of a bit worried. And so I went to have a little look around just to kind of make sure, right? You know, may as well just go and check the doors are closed, the windows are closed, whatever. And as I'm walking around, you know, I'm a bit scatty. You know, I'm looking, you know, I'm flashing around with my eyes, anything that moves, or, you know. But what I started to think about was that, you know, that big surge of physiological sensation was what was driving that behavior. But that situation wasn't negative. It was like the lack of coherence, right? It was the idea that this was happening to me, and it was something like separate. Because as soon as I started to get in tune with that, I could start to use the information from my environment that I was gaining to actually make a bit more of an informed decision. So in the first sense, I'm just flashing around and I just feel scared, and I'm just like, it's just this, you know, complete separate thing. But then suddenly I'm like, I'm noticing that everywhere I look, there's nothing there, right? Every time I check something, it's done. And like, that whole time, if I can absorb some of that information, you know, from those behaviors, then suddenly that whole feeling kind of changes. Suddenly that fear that was sort of like crippling is a bit more like powerful. So I can use it in a certain way. So the similar kind of things happen when we're doing like pole flips and stuff. Like my heart rate elevates a little bit, my breathing changes a little bit, and like, okay, so some of that can take you to a place that's, you know, a little bit suboptimal. If I start, you know, panic breathing and stuff, I'm not going to be in a good position. But the fact that I can feel every different part of my body, everything's more sensitive. The fact that I'm more kind of attentive to every little movement that I make, I'm more aware of exactly where the pole is, exactly where the floor is. Like all of that can be used to inform better decision making, better like behaviors, in terms of I can use that to execute skills better. So my role, I guess, really is trying to create coherence. I try and think about the way that in terms of like coherence between like mind and body, if you will. Not sure if that split is particularly appropriate, but it makes sense. You know, I think the main thing that I try and think about with my coaching is I'm trying to coach for like awareness, and I'm trying to coach for responsibility, which is to say, you know, it's about you, and you're embodying yourself in this, and, you know, understanding where you sit in this journey. Because again, if we use like the backflip example, it's quite easy for someone to stand next to me and go, oh, he stood next to me, he's going to spot me, all right, fuck it. And I just kind of close my eyes and I go, and I'm not there, right? Like my temporality of consciousness is just, I don't know, I'm projecting to like 10 minutes in the future or whatever. I'm not in that moment. So I spot you, you flip around, you land, and you kind of go, oh, what happened? Right, because I wasn't really there, like, and so I'm trying to get you to the point where you can get a bit more comfortable with just kind of being in that moment, within that motion, to feel what that's like. Because there's a lot of other sensations that you can feel, that you can actually interpret and start to get a bit more comfortable with. You know, people have good spatial awareness. You can see the different types of things that trampolinists and gymnasts can do. Like, you can develop your sense of spatial awareness to the point where you can't do triple backflips with 7 different spins in them by just chucking yourself and hoping, right? Like that's a very specifically done thing, right? So I feel like I try to coach for people to understand that they need to be within themselves in that moment, especially when we're doing stuff that involves moving faster than you would generally move in your, right? Because that's another big thing is like, you know, we might move quickly, but when you do flips and stuff, it feels like very instantaneous. And so that you kind of associate that speed with a lack of control, right? Like I just kind of threw myself, but actually that's not really what was happening, right? You still use tension and momentum and all different stuff to create that movement. It's just that we've got to get you used to being in that moment, knowing that moment happens, you know, that little bit quicker. And then from the other side of it is, the awareness thing is, part of it's the obvious stuff in terms of you need to know what you're doing, right? Like that's mostly my role in terms of these are steps 1 through 4 or whatever. But the other thing that's important, I feel like, is I need to know what I'm afraid of, like specifically what I'm afraid of, because what tends to happen is you think of like, I want to ignore my fears because what I'm going to attract what I think about, right? And so if I'm worried about this, that's what will happen. And there's some kind of truth to that. If all I'm thinking about is landing on my head as I'm trying to do a flip, yeah, maybe I put my head in a weird position. But if I leave everything undefined, everything's up for guesswork. So I succumb to all these crazy irrational kind of biases that everything seems like it's going to be worse. Like if I don't really think about it, it's like I'm just going to jump, I'm going to tuck, everything's going to explode, the world will finish, and it'll just be eternal death. And so let's just not do that. Like whereas if I start even just something as simple as like, why are you worried about this? Well, I don't want to land on my head. Okay, well, first of all, that seems perfectly reasonable, right? Like there's no need to be worried about the fact that you don't want to land on your head. That seems like a very good feeling to have. But then immediately after that, you start it's easier to then start to ask questions like, how would I avoid landing on my head? Right. And so suddenly I can start to like bridge this gap a little. I can fill in these gaps a little bit. And again, I'm more informed on the whole experience rather than just trying to skirt through it. I know that was all like very kind of scattered and.
No, I think it made sense. Like it's. You're trying to bring to the table not just technical proficiency, like your hand goes here, you have to tuck now and do this. You're bringing the idea of mind control and mind awareness, which is just as important of a part as like the technical physical part, because that's kind of like that kind of leads it to the human optimization, right? That you're going for, like. The
totally.
mind and body, like you said at the beginning, it did make sense.
Totally.
You did connect to the mind and body.
Yeah. So it's the whole experience, right? Mm-hmm. So part of my reason for struggling to kind of describe some of this stuff, like I did a seminar on fear at the Pole World Festival the last weekend in the UK, and I kind of said to everyone, listen, like I'd love to have a 6-step bullet point thing that I could just give you that, like makes it like this is complicated and hard and takes time. Like the human experience is very complex. How and when or if it even happens is also very complex. So it's hard to be like, this is the start and this is the finish, this is what begins and what end, like, so a lot of it is just complicated. So it's I also try and make sure that I'm not selling the idea that I'm going to give you the magic tablet, as it were, and you can just kind of be rid of these things.
Well, it's something you apply to your entire life for sure. It's not just something that would be pole specific. It seems like, people can come into that awareness through pole, and then apply it outside their lives.
Absolutely. And I mean, I don't think it's too dissimilar from what a lot of other people do. If I go to say one of Marlowe's flow workshops and I just do the movements, like I've missed most of the workshop, right? Like, if I'm not connecting with the feeling, with the awareness, I've not had the pleasure of doing one of her workshops, but I know she talks a lot about somatics and, different kind of ways of thinking about moving and using your body and who you are as a person, interpreting and exploring it through those things. And so I could go and I could get the technical steps 1 through 6, but if that's all I come away with, it doesn't, like you say, it doesn't go anywhere else. If you can kind of embody this notion of being able to address these fears, this idea of being able to move forward, even though everything feels like, I'm supposed to run away, that translates to a lot more than just doing tucks and walkovers and stuff like.
Yeah. I think it would be cool. Are you planning on having people on your podcast who are like, maybe like, well-versed in neuroscience and things like that?
Absolutely. I've got quite a few people on the list, and
nice.
Got some exciting people coming up, and definitely looking forward to exploring some of that a little bit more. Definitely.
Because I mean, especially like over here, like I talk a lot about feelings and emotions and things from that sense, but it doesn't mean that, I mean, I would be so interested hearing more about everything you're talking about, which is like controlling our emotions, or how being in control of where our mind goes when we're doing all of this, and controlling those so that they work in our favor and not against us. That's such an important part of pole too.
I think it's that you're definitely right. I think, but there's also all, kind of the other side of it as well, is that it's not all just about kind of controlling in terms of like manipulating emotions. Like some of it is like you all have talked about, like being in tune with some of this, like being able to kind of sit back and recognize like what are these different things trying to tell us about all these kind of different physiological feelings or different systems engaging with your environment in some way. Like there are messages within these things, if you will, not to sound too
fighting it. I guess it maybe sounded like that's what I'm saying. So like not fighting it, but like using it towards your
absolutely,
good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right.
Nice, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to those episodes and hearing you talk about it more too. But at this point, we're going to jump into the second part of the interview with the questions I ask everyone. So, Who is your pole crush?
Oh damn! I forgot about these questions. This is a hard one because I feel like I've got I watch a lot of different people for a lot of different reasons.
You can cite more than one. We're not super strict on this one.
I think I watch a lot of the Russian guys for inspiration in terms of like tricks and flips and things. Dmitry Politov was the big one for me. So I'd probably have to shout him out. A lot of all of those guys, but I can't pronounce most of their names. Just being honest. I think someone else I get a lot of inspiration from in a lot of different ways would be Hannah Rose Keynes. She's from the UK, a little less well known, which is a shame because she's a phenomenal pole dancer, very, very creative, and she has a lot of like weird in not a reductive way, like kind of odd, strange little transitions and things, and lots of funky stuff, I would say. So I like watching her stuff. I usually can't do it, but it's usually a good start. Be like, okay, well, I can't do that, so how do I make this more reasonable? But there's a lot of people. Michelle Mishka, the Australian pole dancer, she's amazing as well, just super powerful. I guess those three would be the best to shout out.
Nice, good group right there. And how would you like to see the pole community evolve over the next 5 years?
Oh, yeah, another tough one. I mean, I don't know if I have any particular feelings about how it should evolve. I feel like much of the same, mostly would be the quick answer. I've had a few people, like I said, I've had a few pollers on my show, and we've talked a little bit about kind of progression of the industry and stuff, and the Olympic thing, and the whole sport versus sexy type thing, and some of that type stuff. For me personally, I share the same views as a lot of the people that have come with me. I'm not sure about the Olympic thing. I'm not sure if that's the best idea in terms of progressing the culture. It progresses the industry. It progresses certain people economically. I feel like if pole gets in the Olympics, I do well, right? Like being known for doing flips and acrobatic stuff, some of that stuff's going to be that's going to be big, and I could work with that, but I don't think it's a great idea for the culture, just because I feel like it, that becomes the mainstream, that becomes the commonly known and the commonly associated. So like you guys have said before, like everything else gets pushed to the side. That's like the alternate, that's the other thing, which again isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think probably just to kind of tie that off, I don't think it matters. I've always made the same example as like with like hip hop and street dance and things. I mean, like we've used the word street dance before, like, but that word isn't being used in the way that, street dance isn't a style. It's not a style. Like you can go to a studio and you can take a class that's called street dance, and you do some choreography to some Usher or Drake or whatever's, I don't know, listen to the radio. There's whatever it is, it's that same, right? But street dance originally is an umbrella term for the different dance styles within the hip hop culture, right? Like originally pop-in, lock-in, and break-in. But we've now had all these different films, your step ups, your street dance films, all this kind of stuff, and now street dance is thought of as that stuff that Channing Tatum does. But the thing is it's not really a problem, because you can go anywhere and find, air quotes, real hip hop, right? Like you can go anywhere and find people that are in it for the culture, like they know the history, like they're culture heads, right? Like you've had a lot of people on that are closer towards that core of the culture, some of the originators, some like. How do you plan on shutting those people up, right? Like, how do you plan on stopping those people from doing? Like, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
It's not happening, right? So, I think I don't have a problem with the idea of the Olympics. I think ultimately, in terms of the culture, it maybe becomes a bit of a shame in that there should be more props for the creators of the culture that you're able to operate in. But at the same time, people, everyone's going to do what they're going to do. So. For me, for the original question, not much. I think, do your thing. Do your thing.
I think with the Olympic thing, it is, it's good to know. Of course, it's going to go whatever direction it's going to go in.
Yeah,
that's going to be all directions. But it's just good to know what to be aware of and to have these conversations. So if it does happen, be aware that as a community, we have to be able to respond to this and we have to be stronger because of that. And there are things like, I think we talk about skateboarding a lot, right? How maybe we are more like a skateboarding community where like we can do X Games and we can do more, we could do competitions that are maybe a bit more edgy, but that still maintains like that creative style
of it.
Yeah. And it's still kind of, we still kind of have like that community that is like inherently our own because it doesn't belong to everyone, where I guess maybe when it does go to the Olympics, it is everyone does.
There's not as much of the corporate interest and stuff. And I think the skateboarding example is a good one because, I know strip clubs are indoors, but I think that, it's a street culture at the end of the day, right?
Totally.
It's
underground.
It's people. Right, it's people operating in the way that they would naturally operate without kind of, the government in the way, or the different kind of things like the different kind of corporate involvements or whatever. And I agree. I think that's a good example. Obviously, talk about skateboarding though. A lot of those guys, aren't that big on the X Games anymore because, like I say, it did start as that, and then now there's a bit too many logos, a bit too much corporate interest, a bit too many people, being funded for certain, and it all becomes a little bit kind of, I think pole at the moment is just such a beautiful place where it is, it is small, but not that small, right? It's a big community, and everyone owns their own stuff. Everyone owns, like, this is rare. Like, I don't think a lot of people really appreciate like the position that everyone is in at the moment, where you have access to this massive community, and you don't have to go through anyone like that. One day it might not be like that, and these will very literally be the good old days, right?
Yeah, because we always, MTV before Red Bull or whatever.
Right, exactly.
Red Bull does allow for big competitions to happen and for people to get paid, so it is kind of like we're teetering. And it's going to have to go that way because people will need to get paid, but kind of appreciate what we have right now. That's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah,
and
totally.
see the positive in that we aren't there yet, or be cognizant of it. So if, when we do start getting the inevitable sponsorships and stuff, do it responsibly. Maybe you don't need, Pepsi and McDonald's and blah, blah, where you're just kind of like selling your soul. Maybe we'll be more conscious of like the deals that we make that are like in line with what we're trying to put out there. So.
Right. And I think that will happen because, everyone's pretty proactive. I think it might have been Shimmy's episode on this show, actually, where she talked about having reached out to Red Bull and then not, I think it's good. Better that way, better that people like Shimmy reach out and get rejected than everyone be passive. And then because eventually it's coming. Some of that stuff coming from somewhere, however it happens, we don't know. But if the people that are really about the culture are passive about that side of things because they don't agree with it, well, they're going to pick someone else up. Like you say, someone else who doesn't care. Or not doesn't care, that's it's not a good way to say it, but isn't as passionate about the same things, right? They have the same values, and so they'll be quicker to skimp out on the creative control. They'll let them edit it in a certain way, they'll let them dress them up in a certain, or whatever it is, I don't know, right?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think it's good that people are trying to like you say, be cognizant of that and be aware of it. And
Yeah. Well said.
Okay.
And so I'm going to put all of your social media and the link to your show in the show notes. What else do you have coming up that you can share with people if they're looking to find you? Or just like invite you to come because you're a pole whore, so you'll just go sleep on couches if they want you.
Definitely give me a shout if you want me to come see you. I think the main thing now, I'm going to be writing a book. So I'm going to be writing on fear and every kind of expanding and talking a bit more concisely on the stuff that we've kind of talked about today.
Will it be pole focused or more broad audience?
I mean, it will be like athlete focused. Okay. It won't be anything that, won't be able to relate to pole because that is, most of the people that I work with, but it isn't everyone I work with. So, for all intents and purposes, yes, but it's going to be, for athletes in general. It's not going to be a big, 300-page book. It's going to be quite a smaller one just to start off with. But again, just kind of expanding on some of these ideas. And it's not like a how-to, I won't have 6 steps to eradicate your fear type thing. But, it's just more kind of background information and understanding, the complexity and the richness of everything, that whole experience and everything you're kind of working with. So that will be the next thing. I don't have any kind of dates or anything for that yet. But, it won't be too long. So you can keep an eye out for that.
Cool. Oh, good for you. I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So then before I let you go, can you leave us with an empowering message or story or quote, something to sign off with?
I really should have picked out specific answers for these, shouldn't I? That's probably why you sent them to me. The thing is, I kind of saw that and I thought maybe I'll scour through my books and try and find this, the perfect quote, but that would have taken too long. I think one of the things, there's too much to choose from. So it's but one of the things that I have been thinking about a little bit more, it's maybe not the best kind of quote in some senses, but I think in others it kind of is. There was a quote by a biologist from, I think it's from the 50s or 60s, it doesn't matter. Gene Rostrand, his name was. And the quote was, "Theories come, theories go, the frog remains." And what he's talking about is just that there's always different competing ideas and different competing opinions. And, we always feel like we've got a bit more information, a bit that closer to the truth or whatever. And these things, they all crumble, the earth was flat, now it's round, blah, blah, blah. The limits of our understanding are always kind of fluctuating and things, but the problem is still there, right? The issue is still there, or the thing that you're looking at or you're interested is still there. And I think that kind of, it's important to understand on sort of two sides of the same kind of coin, in terms of some of the politics and the culture and the growth and stuff of that. I think it's important on that side because, like you said, at the end of the day, the culture's still here, the pole's still here, so we've got to do something about it. It can't just be all the bickering, this, that, and the other. But the same thing with your personal progress and your training and stuff. People get caught up so much in the planning and the tiny little nominal details, and they never really get started. So the frog runs away, right? I guess in short, got to get on with it because there's work to be done.
Yeah. That was a very unique. I was like, where is he taking this? Okay,
right. I know. That's me.
It.
I'm sorry.
No, we don't apologize for who we are here on Pole Parlour. So
I rescind my apology.
Good. Thank you so much, Shane. It was really fun talking with you and getting your perspective.
Thank you for having me on.
Yeah, and I'm so excited to keep following your podcast. And
awesome.
Yeah. Have a good one. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Pole Parlour podcast. Want more? Visit poleparlour.com for show notes and to link to the Facebook group where you can connect with other poloholics and continue the conversation. Listen to past episodes and subscribe to new episodes on the website, YouTube, iTunes, Stitcher, or SoundCloud. Lots of love, babes. Thanks for listening.